All right. Thank you all for coming here this afternoon. I just want to talk about special session. And what I want to say is that this special session is the poster child of how one-party rule is destroying the legislative process. First and foremost, we do not even have to be in special session. Everything that's on this calendar that they purport to have either can be done by executive order or can wait. But equally important is the process that they have done to create the calendar and the bills. There has been virtually no communication with the minority party relative to what's going on in the calendar for special session or the language in the bill. Basically, we get asked, what color paper do you want to have it on? Other than that, there is nothing that we get to talk about with respect to these bills. Those of us who have given input by making calls have in most cases been ignored. One-party rule is dictating the language and public policy without public input, without the press knowing what's going on in this building or what's going on with meetings. The informational hearings, they're not even hearings, they're just informational committee meetings, are not what we use generally to get bills passed. And we are changing some major policies. As we stand here today, we still don't have the language to the following bills: the Transfer Act, Environmental Justice, the Energy Bill, or the Absentee Ballot Bill. We don't know what those bills are actually going to say. Over the weekend, there have been conversations with others, not minority representation from our ranking members, certainly not leadership from the minority state Senate. And these conversations are about the language that goes into the bills. And there are fundamental problems with some of these bills. And why they don't want to have open dialogue is beyond my scope. But this is what happens when you have one-party rule. This is what happens when you have one person who's going to dictate, or one party that's going to dictate what laws are going to be going forward and which ones are not. There are a number of bills we'd like to see on the agenda. We can't fathom how you could have a COVID crisis and have nothing on health care on the agenda, have nothing with respect to nursing homes on the agenda, have nothing with respect to health equity on the agenda, have nothing about sales tax on PPE on the agenda, have nothing to help reduce health care costs on the agenda. But we have bills which don't even take real effect until regulations are written, and that won't be for a few years. So we shouldn't be here because Governor Lamont can do all this by executive order. To the extent that we are here, the bills should go through the normal process of allowing the public to really see the language and for the minority ranking members to weigh in and have a say so that these bills can be made better. There's good intention on these bills, there's no question about it. But when you rush in a legislative session, it results in making mistakes. The other bills we'd like to see is the police accountability bill. We should make those corrections. It takes effect October 1st. Not just some corrections, the entire bill we should be having up there. So those are the things that we need to do. We are going to be arguing these points in session starting tomorrow with rules and going through regular special session whenever we get called in. We don't have a firm date, Thursday or Friday. And if anybody has any questions, we'll take the questions.
Haven't you been pretty much against him having that kind of authority to just do that with no process?
Well, first of all, the authority we're talking about, absentee ballot, which he has done before, opening up early and letting some other dates go, that's something that he could do. And with the way they want to have it done, that has a time frame. The rest we don't even have to do. If you want to do the marshal's fees so the marshals can charge the client at $10, I don't think anybody really cares. about something like that. If he wants to do that till we get into session and do a permanent fix, those are things that he can do. He shouldn't be doing the Transfer Act. He shouldn't be doing environmental justice. Those are complex matters, better left to a full legislative session. And don't forget, when you do an environmental bill like that, it goes to planning and development, and it also goes sometimes to judiciary, which the Transfer Act would go to judiciary. The reason for that is that you want as many eyes from different angles of the law or different angles from public policy to look at it. And this is completely gone around all those committees.
Do you support the energy bill or the legislation?
I have not seen the final version of the energy bill at all. I don't know what it says. I know they worked on it all weekend. I have no understanding of it. The one that I did see, which was in the middle of the week, I thought had some good parts, had some concerning parts about the magnitude of the storm in terms of getting electricity up. Had to deal with if it was a widespread impact storm. Why would you treat a thunderstorm in the same way you would treat a Category 3 coming through? Why wouldn't there be some review process or due process to see if this was reasonable or not? Staffing to maximum levels is the end result of that bill. That would be a cost to consumers that we would see in our electric bills. So I had significant problems and questions. I understood there's been changes to that, but I can't tell you what those changes are. I have not given the privilege of reviewing the bill, even though I'm the minority leader of the Republican State Senate.
So what does that mean for timing on Thursday? I mean, obviously, you guys, if you haven't seen the pieces of legislation, if you haven't been participating in the drafting of the legislation, there's bound to be a lot of questions.
There are a lot of questions we're going to have. I would also add that even though I say there's a lot of questions we have, I don't want you all to think that we've been holding back on these questions. Over the weekend, I talked to the governor's office. I talked to some stakeholders regarding environmental justice and the Transfer Act, raising concerns from my experience dealing with both of those environments. They have, I think, come to realize there might be some issues that they have to straighten out. So we're doing the best we can without seeing the language, the final language, to tell them here's some red flag areas, and you're going to be asked about these areas. I think you should correct it. We're not laying in the shadows waiting to pounce. We want to be a part of the process, but we have not been part of the process. And frankly, I don't even know who to go to. If it was before the state Senate as a bill, our staff and the Democratic staff work well together. Our lawyer would call their lawyer and we would talk it out and hash it out. There's too many hands in this soup. I don't know who to talk to. I talk to one who's not talking to the other. I can't get a grip on it, and I can't spend 3 hours on a phone call talking to 4 different people. And that's what I did this weekend as best I could. Because some of these bills have good intentions, but the way they're drafted, the consequences of adverse consequences they're not thinking about are major. I had somebody for the working group from the environmental justice said, please, I'm on the working group, don't go forward with this. We don't know what conflicts this has with other sections, both federal and state, and we haven't been able to manifest those and play those scenarios out. It's too many changes, too fast. I don't even know what draft I have, but I would suggest there's no rush. Let's wait. And I totally agree with that. And that's somebody on the working group.
Is there any legislation that you would like to see go forward in a special session? Is there anything we need to address immediately now before the election?
Well, we would like to see the police accounting bill fully addressed. Qualified immunity is hurting. There's been a lot of retirements up and down the board. We have asked the Department of Safety to give us how many state police have retired. We have yet to receive any number from them. We're going to press it later on today. But we think that particularly in the elderly, that should be addressed. You know, the isolation issue, the governor announced that they're going to follow CMS, and ARP said that's not enough. We need to do more. There has to be more opening, and we don't know how many nursing homes are going to agree to CMS rules. But the nursing home issue in isolation has been a significant issue. We've stopped testing workers at nursing homes. 70% of the deaths are coming out of nursing homes. We should be continuing to test people at nursing homes. And if the Democratic majority thinks we shouldn't, we should have that debate. So that's something. PPE for home care workers. This governor stopped PPE but yet at DOT they were giving out masks. I don't understand that concept. How come we're not taking those masks and giving it to home care workers? Enhancing our home care at home aid for the elderly so they could stay at home is going to keep them out of a COVID environment. Those are things that we should be taught. Health equity, that's a big issue. Why shouldn't we have a study on health equity and figure out what we can do? What better time? The population that's mostly adverse seems to be the minority population. Why is that? We should find out what that is, not wait for next session. We should find out now what it is while the iron's hot. Start it now. What is the big deal? It's because it's not their idea. It's because it's not on their agenda. God forbid the Republicans have a voice in the policies of this state. That's what this is about.
Glenn, can you remember a special session so close to a big election?
The only one I do remember is, and I was reminded, somebody wrote it in a story, I don't recall it, but when we did the Stratford economic deal for Sikorsky, it was, I forgot how many months or so, a month or so before the election we did that. Other than that, no, I do not remember another time that we were in for special session, which speaks to the fact that, the Democratic majority have given the governor the powers to run the state and make the decisions that are hard decisions that they don't want to be accountable for. So let the governor make those hard decisions. What businesses are open? What businesses are closed? No football, no this. We're going to restrict the athletics. All those things, schools, hands off. We're going to let the governor make those decisions. But when it comes to political decisions, so they could do their 5x7 card to say, look, I stood up for environmental justice. I slayed the dragon for big energy companies. I stood tall for environmental reasons. They want that 5x7 card. That's why we're going to session. And if you don't believe that, you should look at the Facebook posts of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who are already talking about the accomplishments coming up in special session and how they're going to get all these things done. That's what this is about. That's why we have to rush. It's about politics and power and not about people and transparency. That's the problem.
How do you understand, as far as scheduling goes, when you might be adopting rules?
So I think we're going to be adopting rules. I think the House is going to go first, from what I understand, tomorrow morning. Then the Senate's going to go second tomorrow. And then the House is going to go in on Wednesday for the bills. And depending when that ends, we're either going to go in on Thursday or we're going on Friday, depending on how far the House goes.
Go ahead.
What correction would you like to see with the police accountability? I mean, Senator Saxton feels that the legislation is the way it is. I don't think the Democrats have any intention of opening it up and changing it.
Well, they wanted to correct excess force. That's the only one they wanted to correct. The Democrats wanted to correct excess force. So I guess, as I understand it, it's the restricting the police ability to use certain amount of force in certain situations. They want to relieve some of that and maybe make it a little broader fact pattern for which you can use force. We are saying that the immunity is an issue. You said you were going to fix it, although it doesn't take effect until July 1st. You said you were going to fix it. Why not do that bill? Search and seizure is an issue that we think that we need to look at. Crime is going up at historical rates, particularly in our cities, at historical rates. Murders and violent crime. And some of that is the police are being reactive, not proactive. And we want them to be proactive. And to do that, you listen to the police and you say that you've tied my hands. I have to come in after the damage is done, when I have the ability to come in before the violence takes place. And that's happening to a lot of our youth in our cities. And we should listen to them. And we should listen to the fact that when the pastors and ministers stand up and say, we want more cops on our street, not less, and we want our cops to be proactive, I think we should listen to those voices in our inner city neighborhoods. And that's why we need to correct this bill.
To have a very good relationship with your counterpart on the other side. Have you guys spoken at all? It sounds like the angst is aimed directly at that caucus.
So it's angst at the Democratic majority as a group. It is a group that moves in unison sometimes. But I did talk to Senator Looney this morning. He called me, texted me. I called him back. We did talk. I told him my concerns over the bills. I told him why I had the concerns over the bills. He understands them to be substantive, not just raising stuff to raise stuff. So I did talk to Senator Looney. But once again, there's no direct person to talk to. I don't think Senator Looney is directing the language on this bill. I think some of it's done by his chair, say in the environment, Christine Cohen, but it's also being done by DEEP and other people who have stakeholders in this that are not talking to other stakeholders. So it's who can get to the person who's the drafter to get their stuff in, the special interests who've got that door open to go talk about it. And that's what's scary about these bills. And no one's going to know the adverse consequences of that until it becomes law. And they'll say, we didn't know that happened. For example, there's something in the both in the Transfer Act and in the environmental justice that I started to call some of the stakeholders who I understand were at the table and said, you're okay with this type of reading? And they said, no. Wait a minute, it does that? And I said, well, think about it. And I know there's conversations taking place. It's not to destroy the bill, it's to make it better. And so, yes, I have a good relationship with Marty. And if it was just a bill in the Senate chamber, we could have this conversation. But there are other people that I do not know who are writing these bills all over the place, and I literally mean that, that give me pause and concern. And I don't think that even my voice as a minority leader can be heard by the appropriate people.
Function of the COVID environment and the fact that you are not in the building and that all of this is being done remotely?
Look, I honestly think that the majority has taken advantage of the COVID virus in this situation. They are using that as a blanket to protect them against doing things in the open. And I think that's wrong. If you look at the governor's orders and the whereas clauses with respect to absentees, the COVID cases have gone down because we're not allowing more than 10 people to get together. But we could have over 300 people in this building to do bills. I don't understand that argument. It doesn't make sense. So once again, it is where it's convenient, we have COVID to stop transparency in public hearings and information getting out there. And then when it's convenient, we're going to do it to expedite what we want to get done as policymakers. So, yeah, I think they're using it as a convenient political excuse to get done what they want to get done. And they're moving in unison. And that's with one-party rule. The governor's not standing up to them. One chamber, Democrats not standing to the other Democratic chamber. So there's this complicit acquiescence to this fast track on bills that should get into the public.
When people playing the dragon, I see Kevin survived the trial and the story. Could I ask you about what you guys might want for nursing homes?
There's a whole number of things. We got to keep in mind that while the governor has done a decent job overall on COVID, there is an area where he has not performed very well. We have 74% of our deaths that were COVID-related occurred in nursing homes. That's third worst in the nation. And we know how it got in. It got in human transmission, and while he stopped family members, he allowed workers to go in and out. And come October 31st, those workers, those facilities are no longer going to get state assistance to provide the PPE to them. We need to protect the greatest generation who paid the greatest price under this administration during COVID. We'd like to see an end to social isolation. Many people in nursing homes suffer from diminished capacity. They rely upon their family, their friends, their loved ones to make sure that their eyes and ears on the ground, that they're getting the care they need. So we need to make sure that that ends. A professor from Quinnipiac, yes, Connecticut Knowledge, are foremost leaders in this area, not out-of-state groups. Nicholas Nicholson talks about the ill effects of social isolation and its cost in the Medicare program. We also need to look at building a robust and healthy home care system. Because many people now, if I'm a senior, I do not want to go to a nursing home where I know 74% of COVID-related deaths occurred. But yet, after a decade of dominance by this party and this majority, they have rolled back the advancements of the Rell administration, where we recognize legislatively that money follows the person is the way to go. They have reduced the community spouse protected amount. They've capped enrollment into Category 1. They've attacked the Medicare Savings Program. Although we've been able to save that in recent years, it's certainly an item that they look at. They've also cut back on things like Meals on Wheels and other necessary things that are required for seniors to age in place. Those all need to be part of the equation moving forward so that we don't put seniors at risk. We need to look at the Medicaid reimbursement rate. We got $1.4 billion under the CARE Act that came into the state of Connecticut. Keep in mind, 74% of deaths occurred in this environment, and yet the administration appropriates less than 10% of those funds to nursing homes. Yes, there might be some derivative benefit under PPE and testing, but we know that that's not all aimed to the nursing homes. The governor needs to do better, and if he doesn't, then the General Assembly must act. If he fails to act, then we need to act. But yet that's not on the agenda. Kevin Kelly, State Senator, 21st District.
Len, are you going to support Kevin Kelly to be your replacement as the minority?
No, the caucus has got to make that decision after November. So they'll get together and figure that out. If session ever ends. Just saying. Amen. Thank you so much.